Welcome. You're listening or watching to the next episode of Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio. Unless you're listening out of order, then this might not be next. Maybe you jumped to this one first because you thought the topic was cool. In which case, great. So for you, it is the next one, I guess. So it always counts. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. I'm joined by my good friend Nick Tabor. Nick, how are you today?
I'm wonderful, man, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me again.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show for sure. And I'm really excited to get into our topic today because it's one that actually you brought to me, which I'm kind of excited about. But before we get there, I want to make sure to mention to all the people listening or watching to please support the show by finding out what we do. Even if you just find out what we do. Maybe you don't know all the things we do. We don't just have a podcast. Although this podcast is pretty enormous. This episode is coming out 1003 is this episode, which is pretty insane. We bring you this podcast for free, which is pretty awesome. But we also, Whistlekick as a company, does all sorts of other things. We sell books. We sell sparring gear. We sell training programs. We hold events all over the country. So we would love for you to go to whistlekick.com to find out all of the things that we do. If you do choose to purchase something, you can use the code podcast15 on almost everything to save yourself 15%. But if you're interested in knowing more about this show, you can go to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com and you will find show notes for this event, this podcast, as well as every other podcast we've done. And some those podcasts will have maybe other pictures or show notes with other information and transcripts of all the episodes as well. But here's the cool new thing that I want to make sure we get out to everybody out there listening or watching. If you go to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com, at the top, you will find a button that says subscribe. Now, obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, we want you to subscribe there. Become a follower, click the like button on this episode. As everyone on YouTube says, smash those buttons. Obviously, we want you to do that. But if you go to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com, you can subscribe to our closed mailing list. You will only find information. We will only email you information about podcast episodes. Maybe it'll be some behind the scenes video footage of guests. Maybe bloopers. Believe it or not, Jeremy and I have quite a buildup of bloopers. You're also going to get a free book. That's right. I said a free book. I'm not going to tell you what the book is because I want you to go there and find out for yourself. It costs nothing. This mailing list will not be shared with anyone else. It is strictly for Martial Arts Radio. And so I hope you could consider going there and hitting the subscribe, filling out the information there and get your free book and start getting all of updates on all of our not all of our episodes, but on our episodes that we have coming out. We would love for you to do that. Lastly, patreon.com/whistlekick to help support the show monetarily. Believe me, this show is not free. It costs money for sure. And for less than Nick, how much does a cup of coffee cost at Starbucks these days?
About $5, brother.
There you go. So if you'd be willing to buy me a cup of coffee once a month, that would really go a long way to helping this show continue to grow.
Yes, sir. All
right. So, Nick, we meaning Whistlekick, Jeremy and I did an episode, episode number 555. So,
quite some time back.
Quite some time ago. And we talked about the pros and cons of competing, of what you can gain from doing tournaments, competition. And this episode is the importance of competition. And we're bringing this one because you listened to episode 555 and you had some thoughts about it and you wanted to kind of add a little bit to the conversation. And so here we are. So let's go back to episode 555. I know it was a while ago that you listened because it took us a while to get this on the books recording because of my ankle surgery. If anyone notices watching, you'll see I'm kind of laying down a little bit. It's because my leg is stretched out in front of me. what were your initial thoughts after listening to that episode?
I think you guys really nailed it. I think it was just from my own personal experience. There's a lot more pros to it. Some of the cons, and honestly, it's been a little bit, and it's been kind of crazy for me. I can't remember much. You guys talked a lot about the community, which is a really good thing, and I think the any negatives in reality I can't really think of. I mean, I in my students, I'm always a student of martial arts, but in my prime underbelt years, I was jumping into competitions as much as I possibly could. So, I mean, for me, I'm like, I don't really, I remember thinking when I was listening to it, yeah, that's a good negative, but I can't really figure out a negative personally. Myself.
Yeah,
I can't really see any of that.
I remember doing the episode. I mean, I know it was a number of years ago, but it was fairly. Now I'm going to have to do some research. It was fairly quick in my co-hosting days, so it was one of the early episodes that I remember doing. And so I'm going to actually look this up because I'm interested to see this. But one of the cons that I remembered talking about was not something that I personally saw and or felt, but I have heard it from others. And I believe in the episode I even mentioned that I may have heard it from people that just don't like competition. And so this was or didn't do well in competition. And their rationale for not doing them is that the judging can be biased and that the judging you don't always get a fair shake. So the episode was episode 555, November from 2020, and it was why everyone should consider tournaments. And I think it was my fourth. I'm looking. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. I think it was my fourth episode as co-host, which is
dude. So you're really stretching back there, man. Wow.
Yeah. It was quite a while back.
Yeah. And you do remember that with everything going on with my life right now, some of the stuff, my memory could be spotty. But on that thought, I did remember what you said. With that, I remember a tournament that I went to, and I remember it deterred me for a little while. I grew up in a small town, and it was a very small town, about 5 square miles, and there were 5 dojos. And, in order to put a tournament together, that was pretty simple. Hey, we're doing this. Okay. The joke was you could yell out the window of the dojo and everybody would hear you. So, because the town was so small. But one of the dojos, what they would do was they would pack the tournament with so many of their judges that there was, you could be, I was in a dojo at the time, Jeff Curry's Karate Center. And I'm not saying the name of the other dojo because they've changed owners a few times. It's been different now. But if you walk in and you see, I'm with Jeff Curry's Karate Center, and then the 3 judges at the table were all 3 of the competing school. And then I'm like, I guess I'm getting bronze if there's 3 of us. And it always deterred a little bit. But I could see that, and that was more of I guess you could say it was kind of a political thing more than anything.
And I think I brought that up.
Yeah. When you stretch outside of your area, that's when the positivity comes to be. But also, like, the competitiveness ain't that bad. Where you could do that. And one of the things, if you don't mind, if I bring one part up that
of course.
Particularly, I'm going to think about with sparring. I was a pretty decent as an underbelt, and the few times I competed as a black belt, I got pretty good with sparring in my dojo. And I was doing well. I said point, it was traditional point sparring. Points at 5. 5 points win, and I got fairly good at it. When I got into the tournaments, however, that's when I noticed there was a problem. And here's the thing I figured out. And when I was pondering on this, I remembered these thoughts. When you're competing in your dojo, right? It's the same people. And I don't know if you've had this, you've had a couple of dojos yourself, Andrew, but you tend to face almost the same people after a long
Yep.
stretch.
Yep.
Right? So without consciously being aware of it, you start noticing their little ticks. And I had a childhood friend of mine. Him and I started almost the same day in the dojo, and we went up, and I mean, he went his way, and we still talk every once in a while, but this kid was Ryan, right? And just to give you an example with that, Ryan was a dude who, like, he would wait for somebody to bend a little bit over, and then he would do this jumping, like a jumping two-knuckle punch. Get the back of the head, get the point. So all I would do is just wait for him to do that. His side would be open, side kick there. I'd get the 2 points and find out. I'm like, hey, I'm kind of good with the side kicks today. I'm doing well. Come to the tournament time when you're facing somebody in another school, and, I have my own issues, so my hands tend to jump. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm exposing myself unintentionally here. And to the day and age where, now everybody has a cell phone, where everything's recorded, back when, even my last tournament was, I think, 2007. I did it on my own, or 2008 rather, but beside the point, we had somebody, my dad would do when I was young. He would have a camera that was over the shoulder.
Oh yeah,
with
sure.
the giant VHS, and they do that, and you see a few of them. But he filmed that. I'd go back like Tom Brady, go back and look at my plays and see what I did, and I look at it, and that's one of the big things. It's like you can be good around somebody, but if you fought said person 50 times, you tend to know that person. And when you're outside of it, and when you're outside of it, then you could say, regardless, the judging fairness aside for a moment, you can learn from yourself, and you can learn about, okay, here's what happens when I get nervous. When I get nervous, my right arm goes up a little bit more. I got to be aware of that. I got to be aware of that, and you learn yourself as a fighter.
Yeah,
as a fighter, how you do.
I think that's a great point in one of the benefits of doing competitions is having other people to test yourself, quote unquote, test yourself against in sparring, because you're absolutely right. When you are in a dojo and you are always sparring the same people, you get to understand their habits on how they fight, and you know what to look for, and you can, they're always growing, but you are too, but you can figure out what you need to do to beat them. And then you come to a tournament and there's new people. It helps make you a better fighter because of it. Even if you lose, I think there is stuff to learn there and gain from that for sure. Absolutely.
And it's not only that just with there, but it's in the forms as well. The open hand forms, or empty hand, or however you call it. And even in the weapons as well. Where you see it. And I remember, going to tournaments as a kid, and even when I started my own dojo, and I would take kids along, and you'd see somebody, I do very traditional bow forms, and doing something like that. But then you see someone using a staff and swinging it around their neck, up, catching it, and doing some fancy stuff, So when you see that, and you look at it, they go, can I, and this is going to sound negative for a second, but if you see something like that and you go, you're like, can I do that? But also you say to yourself, what can I do to do something like that? Or can I improve my own self? Am I doing enough? But it allows you to take notes. It allows you to take notes on others and see other styles as well.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I'll be surprised if this didn't come up in episode 555, was that for some people, that's a downside to doing, going to tournaments. You're a school that doesn't do the flashy stuff, as many would call it, the non-sport or the sport version
Right.
with tricking and gymnastics in your forms and things like that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I think we as an organization, as a martial arts competitions, have recognized that those are different from traditional forms, which is why most tournaments, not all, but most tournaments split them apart. You've got sport forms and traditional forms, right? But if you way back in the day when you and I were kids going to tournaments, and for the record, listeners may or may not remember or know this, I've only been I'm coming up to 50 years old, and I've been to maybe 5 or 6 tournaments. Well, actually, no, there were 2 in a row I went recently, like maybe 8 tournaments my entire career and I started training when I was in high school. So I don't have a lot. There is nothing wrong with that, but I'm only saying that so that people recognize, I'm not coming from this vast knowledge of going to lots of tournaments. But when I did go as a kid, and in my early, in my 20s and 30s, I went to a couple, I think. They weren't split apart, and so I would be doing my traditional form and competing against these other martial artists who were doing the spinny, flashy, and as a youngster who was not as educated as I am now, I would say that's not martial arts, that's not karate,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. And part of it was they beat me, and I was upset about that, and so I need something to complain about. And I think that's where some people and now looking back at it, I recognize they did a way better, their form deserved to win because they were better than I was, right? But I think for a lot of people, they see those two things together and think that's not fair because one is different than the other. And so I think that's where some of the political, it being not fair and skewed one way or the other sometimes comes into play, where people think that, whether it's true or not, they think that that's the case.
And the perception is reality. I could see your point with that. That where you look at it, and as the example I use, where you see your competitors have the certain patch on their dobok, and then you look at the judges and they got all 3 of them have the exact same patch. And you go, gosh, no, now what do I do? But, I remember a time when I was a kid, and one of the 10 things that I think is a good lesson for me that I always picked up was it was in the city of Taunton, Massachusetts, which is not very far where I live in Fall River. And we're in we're going all day, and I think I picked up a second place in weapons. I think, the last one of the day was the sparring, and we're going against this, us, and when I was at a dojo, Gifford's Academy, and Gifford's Academy, when we went to tournaments at the time, we were very full of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And, walking in, we're like, okay, we're the, I hate to say, it was like Fonzie walking in. It kind of shows my own age. Cool, we're cool, right? But then we got knocked down a peg. We got knocked down a peg sometimes because I realized I was against this one kid, and I got my clock clean, man. It was 5-0 done, and I'm like, wow, what did I, and it's not like Karate Kid, getting kicked in the jaw or anything. But then I realized, I'm like, okay, I'm sticking around, and I wanted to make sure the person who, or wanted to see the person who beat me get the whole thing.
Sure.
So if I lost to the person who took the gold, I wouldn't feel so bad. I wouldn't feel as bad. I'd still feel terrible, but then I looked at it and I realized I am extremely emotional. And it taught me there, because one of the things competition can teach, you may not be the best in the room, but you still need to walk away at the end of the day. And, what a loss can do, you can sit and you can sulk and you can feel terrible. I've done it. I've done it. We all have done it. Or then you can walk away and go, all right, I didn't do as great as I thought I did, but then go back and look and go, and this is going to sound bad for a second, but just, follow me, listeners. You can go back and go, what could I do better? And not analyze yourself, or like, when you're, laying awake at night going, oh my God, what did I do? And you look at it and you go, it just wasn't my best day.
Sure.
We walked in, high and mighty, we're Giffords Academy Martial Arts. That doesn't matter where you're from. It's, because when you get into the ring with somebody, it's your own skill. I mean, it doesn't matter when it really happens. It's your own skill. How did you do? And the real deal is, if you play your cards right, you can only get better from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. You bring up a good point, which segues into the next part I wanted to talk about. You get beat by someone, and then you're like, well, if that person beat me, so I hope they win. Like, and when they do win, you feel happy for them, right? Or you can feel happy for them. And then you go up and you congratulate them, and you make a new friend. Like, one of the best reasons, in my opinion, to do tournaments and compete is the community aspect, is the meeting of other schools and people. And
absolutely,
I it's not the only benefit. There are a ton. Listen to 555 for a bunch of others, but I think the building the community aspect is huge, and I think that's one of the best reasons to do that.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, and I think also competition within outside of tournaments as well. If you have competition in other schools,
yep.
And I'm just gonna draw back to when I grew up, like very small town, Somerset, Massachusetts, 5 square miles, 5 dojos, and in the mid 90s and mid 2000s, if you didn't play football, you were on the outside, or you did football, you did music, and then there's the Karate Kids,
Yep.
hanging around here. But at least if you do have some competition, like I could do a pretty mean axe kick. Swing up, swing down, and then there were kids in the Kempo class, the Kempo school, who would try to, like, okay, Tabor, how did you do that? I'm like, okay, then we explore the mechanics of it, because Kempo traditionally you don't go as high. So okay, how did you do that? And then we start talking and develop a community in the school, in the town, and helped each other out.
Exactly.
They helped each other out because it became competitive. All right, Tabor can do a good axe kick. I got to work on mine. And then, the other guys would, I think there was a Jeet Kune Do school, a Muay Thai as well. And when they, okay, they're pretty good with boxing. Okay, let me get my swing in a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then, I realized, one of the things, now talking it out, it also made me better as a teacher down the road. Because, you can also do this where we have students who may do something better than us. Down the road, and then we could pick up from them, because we may not always be great.
Absolutely.
We may not always be great at everything.
Yep. And, taking even a step back further, as a school, because you mentioned your town had 5 square miles, you had 5 martial arts schools.
Yeah.
Having those other schools close by doesn't, and I'm gonna slow down to make sure everyone hears this. Another martial arts school in your town is not the enemy.
Exactly.
I'm gonna say it again. If there is another martial arts school in your town, they do not have to be the enemy. What do you find right next to almost every McDonald's in the world?
I don't know.
A Burger King.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Think about it for a second. Listeners, think about it. Every time you see a McDonald's, with rare exception, within a mile, there is a Burger King, right? And
Yeah.
do you think they care about that? No. In fact, if you're the only burger place in town, you're only going to attract people who like burgers. But if you've got burgers and some other things, maybe you'll get a few other people. But if you've all of a sudden got 5 different restaurants in town, people are thinking, oh, that's the area of town I want to go to because there's lots of places to eat. You will actually attract more people by having those other competitions of other schools to go to. So competition is not bad. We're not just talking go to a tournament and my student competes against another student.
Right.
I think we need to consider, and we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I just want the listeners to recognize that there is importance to competition. That includes having another martial arts school in town. That does not have to be a bad thing. Can it be a bad thing? Yes, it could be run by bad people. Like, there are bad people in the world, right? They could do bad things, but just the fact that there is another martial arts school does not automatically make them the enemy. And I wanted to throw that out there because we're talking about the importance of competition, and some people see that as competition as well.
And you're right too. And I mean, one of the things that, if I can add to that, is it's good for when my sensei at the time. One of the things we realized is, we became very good friends, and I'm still friendly with one of the owners of a place called USA Karate, which is in Somerset, Mass. And one of the things we realized is with competition also brings up the strength of schools. And so, for instance, like that, and I had this recently with one student who's under me. You start to see and you start to know that, and we could be like, and I had the small town as well that had, the high school and the high school in the town next door that did the football game at Thanksgiving. And, and one of the coaches always said you could be a rival for a day, but you still work together with the same goal. And that always hit because you can figure out when you get together to compete, you see the strengths. You might have a student, and this may be a little bit on the negative side, but you could find somebody who's like, you know what, this may not be the person for me, but down the road, there's this place that might be a better fit for you, what you're looking for. And in reality, how you're going to know when you see this and you go, you know what, you may be able to do it. And I did this with one of the students I have. When it wasn't vibing with me. She just really didn't like who I was. But there's another school that has female instructors who can, and I'm on my own, I said, this may be better for you. And they said, okay, because it also, like, competition brings people together. And we've known this for a while with you and I in Whistlekick, but when you have more communication, and just bouncing off what you said, the nearby school doesn't have to be the enemy. But it brings everybody together because then we all know each other. Together, we all survive.
Yep. Exactly.
We all survive. We're competing to get people in the door. Yes, that's every business.
Yeah,
as you said, absolutely. A Burger King and a McDonald's are.
Exactly.
But at least we're all together. We know that. Go, hey, Larry and Shannon may be better for you. Here, let's
absolutely.
Here's this number.
Now
here's this number.
You have been thinking a lot about tournaments.
Yes, I have.
The last few months. I know this for a fact.
Yes, I have.
Let's talk about why are tournaments so much on your mind right now? What's going on?
Okay, so a few months back, I was offered the position as coordinator of tournaments for Whistlekick. And
Whistlekick is going to have a tournament division?
Oh. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So when I was, and for all these reasons that I've been demonstrating in the conversation and many more, I couldn't resist jumping in. Where it was offered and everything was right. And Jeremy's asked me, he's like, do you want in on this? Because it's going to be pretty big. I'm like, I didn't even flinch.
Yeah, no, that's
Like,
great.
yes, and and you're married as well, Andrew. So I went there and I went to my wife and said, "This is what I'm doing," and she said, "Great." And I went, like there's a moment I went, "Uh-oh," and she was really supportive. Thankfully for my wife being great. I had to get that in too to get a husband point, but we have this. So yes, there is the first of hopefully many. We have a competition March 29th, Concord, New Hampshire at Rolette Middle School in
Awesome.
Concord, and it's the first of many, the Whistlekick Showdown, and it's
Cool.
on the site on whistlekick.com to be able to pre-register.
Mm-hmm.
And it is available for you. We're under the Twin State Martial Arts Association as well. So the rules are really good. Everything is set up well. This is going to be a beautiful time because it's not only a competition, but it's a celebration of martial arts. And we're pulling people from all over New England to come on in.
Yep. Awesome.
We're going to do things a little differently. But what I encourage everyone to do when you're there, don't go home right away. We're going to have a hangout spot later. We're
awesome.
We're going to have food trucks there as well. And even if you don't know anything about Whistlekick at all, there's going to be something on the other divisions as well.
Cool.
So
cool. And if you
day to remember.
And if you do know Whistlekick at all, you know that when we do something, we put everything we have into doing it, doing it to the absolute best of our ability. And so if you are anywhere within driving distance of Concord, New Hampshire on March 29th, it would behoove you to make plans to go. I am irritated that I'm not going to be able to attend because of my foot surgery. I'm hoping that I can get out of the house by then, but I probably won't be walking, and I might not be able to drive, but we'll see. But there's going to be a lot going on, I'm sure. And I say I'm sure because I don't know, because I'm not in the tournament division. So I'll get to be surprised just like everybody else is. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And it just, anytime we get together, it's always, for any of you who have been involved with Martial Summit, with All In Weekends, with any of the free training days that Whistlekick has come along, you all know for a fact that there is magic in the room when it happens.
And you got to be there to experience
an unforgettable day. Exactly. And if you are there, what you're going to tell everyone who's not there is, I wish you were there. And if you're not there, you're going to tell everybody, I wish I was there. Yep. What side do you want to be on?
Good point. Excellent. So this episode will come out early March, so people have time to still register for the event. Is there anything that you can tease to let people know what's going to make this different besides the cool hangout at the end?
There is the cool hangout. We have T-shirts and hoodies available as well. There is a different grand prize for black belts, other than a trophy. So,
okay, that's cool.
And we have many, many, many other things. And all I could say, audience, is just stay tuned.
All right.
There's going to be much more come along. Look up on the socials. Look on Facebook. Look for any events or anything else.
Yep. There is a Facebook page. There is a Facebook page for it. I know. I've seen.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll be talking to y'all.
Excellent. Nick, anything else we need to chat about before we say goodbye here about the importance of competition?
I think we've covered it all, Andrew. I really think we have.
Awesome. So, listeners and viewers, if you have thoughts on any of this, let us know. You can go on our Facebook page, Martial Arts Radio, our Facebook group there to chat about this episode as it comes out. What are your thoughts on competitions? Are you going to the Whistlekick Showdown on March 29th? Let us know. That'd be really fun. Yeah. You can also, if you have any thoughts on this, you can email me, andrew@whistlekick.com. I know you can email Nick at whistlekick.com.
Nick
right?
at whistlekick.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You can, don't forget, check out our website, Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio.com. Go to that subscribe button on the website to get introduced to our mailing list. Again, you might have done this before and be on the Whistlekick email list, but that gives you stuff about everything Whistlekick does, which is great. But this is going to be very specific to martial arts radio. So there's going to be some fun things coming out there. So you're going to want to get involved for sure. And then patreon.com/whistlekick to help support the show. Tell a friend about this episode. And I think that's it. So until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day.
Have a great day.